Hello YouTube, Dave here again. So this is sort of a bonus video. It's not something that I normally do videos for a lot for my channel, but every once in a while I like to talk about my love of video games. So last year I picked up the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, something again that I thought I was never going to be able to find. It was really difficult to find these in stock, and so I was really fortunate to get my hands on them, or to get my hands on this. So I've had this for a little while now, but I recently, actually maybe was it this year that I picked this up? Anyway, I've had this for a little while now. But I also recently, just a couple of days ago, got to add something to my video game collection that I really never thought I was going to pick up, and that is the NES Classic Edition. So this originally came out in 2016, was when they released the original NES Classic Edition, and they didn't produce very many of them compared to the demand that was there. So they sold out pretty quickly, but Nintendo did eventually, kind of come to the realization that this is kind of a cash cow for us. So they re-released it in just this year, I think it was actually. So I was able to pick this up. Like I said, I saw it only once before when they did the initial restock. And I was at a Walmart, and they had one copy of this in their case, and there was somebody that was there who got there before me. Not that I had the money to buy it at the time anyway, but this person was literally standing almost like a guard in front of the case. He has like his arms folded, and I just kind of watched this unfold because he sent his girlfriend or sister, whoever he was with, he sent her to go get somebody to come over to the case. What was weird though is that, I went back through about 20 minutes later, and they were gone, but the system was still there. So either there was another one that they brought out afterwards so that it looked like there was only one, or maybe he changed his mind. I have no idea. But I managed to pick this up. Now, I actually want to do, I never did like a real unboxing video or anything like that for the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, so I thought I would do that for both of these systems in one video. But before I do that, I just want to say one thing when it comes to the NES Classic Edition. So, just last night actually, every once in a while I like to go on sort of an unboxing kick and just watch other people's videos of these things and sort of get their thoughts or their impressions. But one thing that I've been seeing a lot of, and this is one thing that really kind of irritates me when it comes to retro gaming sort of stuff, and it's one of the reasons that I just never want to get into retro video game collecting. There's a whole host of videos out there for people pointing out the fact that the box for the current reprint is marginally different from the first run of consoles, and they're basically doing that as a way to sort of, again, drive prices or keep prices for those original releases up, and to keep them like collectible values, or to protect their investment. And like, I collect a bunch of stuff, and I don't collect any of it for the idea that it's going to appreciate in value or worry about its resale value, because if I collect something, I really don't want to sell it in the first place. The big difference is that the quality of seal was moved from here to there, and they added the ESRB information on the front, and that's it. And the fact that you've got people out there like saying that, oh, this is a completely different, thing, and if you have this, it's not as valuable as the one from 2 years ago, where the only difference is the freaking ESRB logo, and the fact that the seal of quality moved from one side to the other, I think is ridiculous. I just kind of want to throw that out there. But since I'm here, and since I kind of want to do the unboxing video for it, I'm going to unbox the NES Classic Edition and the Super Nintendo Classic Edition. So I sort of repacked up the Super Nintendo Classic. I have had the NES Classic Edition out as well, but the only thing I actually took out of the box was the console itself. I used the hookup cords from the Super Nintendo Classic Edition because they were already hooked into my TV. And I also was using the controllers from the Super Nintendo, and I'll kind of explain that in a moment. But first, let's just have a look at the awesomeness that is the NES Classic Edition. One of the great things about these Classic Editions, both of them that are out so far, is that they really try to recapture the look and feel of the original box art, or some of the earlier box arts for the consoles themselves. So this is what one of the older versions of the NES system would look like, although with the red banner across the top there. It's more in the style of some of the boxes they had in the early 90s, like 90, 91, before the Super Nintendo came out. They sort of rebranded their boxes and stuff like that, but still really, really cool. You've got like the stars up on the front, up onto the top there, and it just sort of, you know, merges into this like blue background. Really, really cool. Just really awesome. On the front it shows some of the major titles that are included here. So you got Super Mario Brothers, Metroid, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Kirby's Adventure, and of course the Legend of Zelda. On the top of the box you just have the, you know, the red top there, and it has the word Classics, which is obviously the series, and it has the NES controller printed on the top there, which looks really, really cool. On the bottom you just have sort of like your run-of-the-mill legal information, and then on the sides, so on this side you have, you know, the image of someone sort of holding the console up, and it just reads NES console. It's a retro blast from the past with the return of the all-time fan favorite Nintendo Entertainment System. This mini-sized NES Classic Edition is packed with 30 pre-installed classic Nintendo Entertainment System games from the 80s and a couple from the 90s. At least one from the 90s, fully loaded and ready to play using the original NES Classic controller. And it just has different languages, so you got French, and then you have, I think this is Spanish, or, yeah, Spanish. And then on the bottom, you have a sprite of Bowser, which is just really, really cool. On the other side, we have the controller. So it says the NES Classic controller, play classic NES games the way they were meant to be played on a full-sized original NES controller. Just plug it in and you're ready to go. Includes all the original features, the control pad for quick control and movement, A and B buttons for rapid-fire action. And boy, the term rapid-fire action really feels like a marketing blurb from the 80s. I don't know why. It may just be me, but it definitely feels that way. And then you have the select and start for menu selection and pausing the game. And of course you got the other languages there, but on the bottom, instead of having Mario, which is what I thought they would have because they've got Bowser on one side, we've got 8-bit original Legend of Zelda Link, and that is just awesome. And then on the back we just have the retro blast from the past, and this really looks sort of like, it emulates some of like the old World of Nintendo style signs. The old like light up signs that had the lights that would sort of scroll across and form the letters, stuff like that. Really, really cool. And of course you just have it in the other languages there as well. You also have some box art for some of the games that are included, as well as a few screenshots which have like just the borders around them, and the screenshots here have that like shape to them and look to them like you would find on the back of the game boxes, you know, back in the day, which is just really, really cool. So we got the complete list of 30 games here, so we're just going to go over these really quickly. We have Balloon Fight, Bubble Bobble, Castlevania 1 and 2, Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., Double Dragon 2 The Revenge, Dr. Mario, Excitebike, Final Fantasy, Galaga, Ghosts and Goblins, Gradius, Ice Climber, Kid Icarus, Kirby's Adventure, the Mario Brothers Arcade, Mega Man 2, Metroid, Ninja Gaiden, Pac-Man, Punch-Out featuring Mr. Dream because the Mike Tyson license expired in like 1990, Star Tropics, Super Contra or Super C, Super Mario Brothers 1, 2, and 3, Tecmo Bowl, and then Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. So some of these games are ones that I've never actually played until I got this the system. The biggest one has to be Final Fantasy. I never got to play the original Final Fantasy back when I used to have my original Nintendo, which I had for about 5 years, I think it was, 4 or 5 years. And back then I only had the Super Mario Brothers 1, 2, and 3. I had Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! And I had a 31-in-1 multi-cart with like the Famicom style cart on top of like the converter. Had like the ribbon sticking out so that you could actually pull the game cartridge out of the Nintendo. But the multi-cart, the 31-in-1, was all like black box games. So I never got to play the original Final Fantasy. I have Final Fantasy 2 or 4, depending on which region you're from, for the Super Nintendo downloaded on my Nintendo Wii. And we'll get to the Super Nintendo Classic games here as well, but that was one I really, really wanted to get. And to sort of tie in with what I typically do on this channel, there's a few interesting things related to Dungeons and Dragons with some of the games on here. So, for example, Final Fantasy. The original Final Fantasy actually uses a lot of stuff, or a lot of inspiration from D&D. So, for example, your spellcasters have, instead of having magic points that they do in like from the later games forward, they have level of spell and then they have spell slots, and that's it. So you have like 4 first level spells per day. You have 4 first level spells and 2 second level spells, kind of thing. So it uses that system. It's not shown here, but the box art for Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest literally has the image of Dracula sort of on a balcony, and that is lifted pretty much straight off of the original Ravenloft adventure for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So a couple of D&D tie-ins so that this video doesn't seem completely out of the ordinary for this channel. So without further ado, let's go ahead and open this up. So the first thing, and one of the coolest things that's included here, so you have your setup instructions, which, you know, all these types of consoles have, although as somebody who's been hooking up video game consoles since like 1988, I think is when I got my my NES, which I really wish I would have kept, but I ended up giving to one of my cousins after I got my Super Nintendo. I know how to hook up most video game consoles, so there's not a lot of stuff there that's going to really be difficult to figure out. But the cool thing is, so you got, you know, the instructions here, but on the other side, you have this like 1980s style poster, which looks like the marketing image that would have been used to promote the original NES during the test market phase when they were trying to break into the North American market. So you have the image, like, or the caption, "Now you're playing with power," which is, you know, the NES catchphrase. And before I forget, it's also on the flap here, the tab for the box. When you open it up, "Now you're playing with power." But you also have the image of Rob set up there with the Gyromite stuff. The 2 controllers, you got Duck Hunt being played with the zapper, the light gun. And you can tell this is from one of the earlier promotional images because the barrel and everything is gray, whereas the system that I had, they had already changed the gun barrel and handle color to orange to make it look much more like a toy. And then you also have the cartridges here, and these are sort of just mock-ups, so they're not even like the official, like, finalized cartridges, but you have Duck Hunt and Gyromite, which I just think that's really awesome. So you've got that, as well as just the warranty information. So nothing too, you know, fantastic as far as that goes, but that poster is awesome. And I don't really display posters or anything like that, but if I were to, that is one that I would definitely consider putting up on my wall. So we have the console itself, and you know, this is also referred to as the NES Mini, and it's pretty obvious why. So this thing is pretty small, but here we have the console itself. You could probably fit like 5 or 6 of these on, well, no, but that might be an exaggeration. You could fit like 4 of these on the actual original NES. The old school NES was like the size of a VCR. So you got the console here. It's got the text, the things on the top here, the ridges, which I think they were the vents back with the original NES. You have the controller ports. What's cool about the controller ports is they are the same ones that you use to plug into the bottom of a Wiimote. So if you have like the Classic Controller or Classic Controller Pro for the Wii, excuse me, they will plug in to these ports and you can use them. On the other side, the flip side of that, you can actually plug the controllers with these classic consoles into the bottom of a Wiimote if you want to run or you want to play virtual console games that you downloaded and you want to use like the original feeling controller for those games, then you can do that. So I think that's really cool. I've used the Super Nintendo one a few times playing Final Fantasy 2/4. So again, just really, really cool looking. It has like the right shape of the NES, the right colors. The flap here is purely decorative, which kind of sucks. It would have been nice to just like flip that open, and even if they had like a little mock-up of like a cartridge that was like inserted just as a like an art piece, it would have been kind of cool. But you know, it is what it is. On the back, you just have the HDMI out, the DC in, and the HDMI symbol. The DC in is a micro USB cord, so like micro USB to USB. That's what you use there, and you have your buttons, of course, with the red light. Now it's obviously not plugged in, so I can't show the light off, but you've got the power button, which actually clicks in like the power button used to back with the original NES, so you can see it's depressed, and now it's back out. So that's really cool, and then you just have the reset button, which you use to access the main menu. I've seen people that have had like the Classic Controller Pro plugged in, or the Classic Controller for the Wii plugged into these, and if you press the home button on those, it will take you back to the main menu. So that might be an option there as well. And I'm actually probably going to keep this out because this is going to go right back into the probably into the TV for the next few days before we go away for a weekend, because here in Canada, at the time I'm recording this, we're less than a week away from Canadian Thanksgiving, so we have ours in October. Alright, continuing on with the NES, we have the controller. And I just realized that I probably repackaged my Super Nintendo controllers wrong, so I'll fix that when I go, because I want to take these with me when we're gone for the weekend. But anyway, you have the original NES controller. Now this one has not been opened. I've taken it out just to hold it in my hands because I haven't held one of these style controllers since like 1991. It's been a very long time since I held an NES controller in my hand. The buttons feel great. I mean, it takes me back. But the issue is that the cord is ridiculously short. You can buy extensions, stuff like that, but I don't have the funds for it right now, and you know, it's not that necessary for me. There's all the other alternatives to be able to use controllers for this, but you've got like the rubbery start select buttons, which is awesome, and then you have the B and A buttons, which feel great. So that's the controller. So we'll just slide that back in here, because like I said, the only time I'm probably going to have that controller out is, I mean, I might do it if I have it hooked up to a TV that's like right in front of me. Which is what I think the original kind of intent was for these, was that you were going to have the you were going to have the thing, because you have to use the reset button. I guess the idea was it would be like on a desktop plugged into your monitor, and you'd be sitting right there. So it works for that, I guess. But anyway, we also have just our adapter. So you can plug this into the wall and plug your HDMI, your USB cord into that. I don't do that. I actually run the power directly from the TV because it cuts down on the number of plugs that I need. And just underneath everything here, we have the power cord, which again, I don't have this, I've never taken this out because I just use the one that came with the Super Nintendo Classic. So when I do the unboxing for the Super Nintendo Classic, both the power cord and the HDMI cable are not going to be in the box because they're plugged into my TV currently. But you also get the HDMI cord, and of course, interestingly enough, the HDMI cord is not labeled as a Nintendo product on this one. I think the Super Nintendo one, oh, there we go, never mind, I lied. So there's the Nintendo symbol on one of the cords, and the other one just has HDMI on there. So anyway, that's pretty cool, but these will just probably sit in the box unless I need them for something else. Like, we do have another TV that we're not really using right now, so I might move it into a room and plug that in. So we'll see sort of how that goes, but for now. We have that stuff there. And we'll just put that back in. Alright, so there we go. So that is the NES Classic Edition. So up next, we'll have a look at the Super Nintendo Classic. Alright, so here we have the Super Nintendo Classic. Like I said, I did show the box off, and I did show like the console and stuff in a different video, but I just never had it like in the actual packaging itself. So let's just have a quick look at this. We'll examine it the same way we did with the NES Classic. So you just have the box art here. Now this looks like the old Super Nintendo box from like 1991. The only thing that's different between this and the box that I had, I mean, besides the games listed there, was the console that I had Super Mario World packed in, so it had like the game cartridge down there. But this is just awesome. It's got like the turquoise box there, the purple bar. Never knew quite what those were for. Then you have like your SNES sort of logo there. You have your rating system there, your ESRB, which apparently drastically alters the value of some of the consoles for reasons I can never ever fathom. But it shows the console there. It shows the looks like the old controller ports, and I'll kind of show that off in a moment. So the NES Classic, one of the, I guess, the downsides is that the controller ports are just open and exposed. So with this one, they actually have this cover plate that goes over top of them that looks like the old school controller ports, but those are decorative. You flip the thing down, I'll show you in a moment. And then we just have some of the games that are included here. So again, you got some of your big Super Nintendo games. You got Super Mario World, Donkey Kong Country, F-Zero, Super Mario Kart, and the Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. When I had my original Super Nintendo, which like an idiot I sold after I got like my N64 and GameCube, I actually had all of those games that are listed here. I actually had like the cartridges for all of them. I had the collector's edition of the Platinum Seller for Super Mario Kart. I had Donkey Kong Country. I still have my Donkey Kong Country, actually, which is cool. F-Zero. I had all those games physically, but I sold them when I sold my original Super Nintendo. On the sides here, we just have the image of them holding up the Super Nintendo console, and it just says, Super NES console. It's a super retro blast from the past, with the return of the all-time fan favorite Super Nintendo Entertainment System. This mini-size Super NES Classic Edition is packed with over 20 pre-installed games, and by over 20 they mean 21. Super Nintendo, yeah, from the 90s, fully loaded and ready to play using original style Super NES Classic controllers. Now there's no artwork or anything on the bottom there, which is a bit of a shame, but they did make the writing bigger. On the other side, we have the Super NES Classic controller. So play classic Super Nintendo Entertainment System games the way they were meant to be played on a full-sized original Super NES controller. Just plug it in, and you're ready to go. Includes all the original features: control pad for quick control and movement, A, B, X, and Y buttons for rapid-fire action. There's that term again. And special L and R shoulder buttons, as well as select and start for menu selection and pausing the game. On the top there, you also have, again, the red box, or the red top there, but instead of having the NES controller, it shows the Super Nintendo controller and has classics on there. On the back, this one actually has the box art, I think, for all 21 games, or all 20 games, plus they included Star Fox 2, which was a game that was like 90% completed, but it was never released due to the fact that the Sony PlayStation had come out, and they were, you know, the graphics were sort of a step up from the Super Nintendo, and they were focusing on the N64 at the time, so they didn't want to have a major release on the Super Nintendo that looked like sort of a step down from what they'd done before. It was even around this time that Donkey Kong Country 3 was done by a different part of like Rareware, so it wasn't the same group of people, I don't think, which is why Donkey Kong Country 3 looks so different. So anyway, a little bit of history there, but you can get this Star Fox 2. It's included, but you have to unlock it, and it actually tells you how to unlock it. You just have to complete the first stage of the original Star Fox, which is in there. But let's just look at the games included. So we have Contra 3 Alien Wars, Donkey Kong Country Earthbound, which I still haven't played yet. I need to give that a try. F-Zero Kirby's Dream Course, Kirby Superstar, Mega Man X, Secret of Mana, Star Fox, Street Fighter II Turbo Hyper Fighting, Super Castlevania 4, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Super Mario Kart, Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, Super Mario World, Super Metroid, Super Punch-Out, The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, and technically it's Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, but they just call it Yoshi's Island. And you've got like the box art there for let's just make sure they have all 30. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Yep, so we got all 20 of the box arts there, which is really cool to see. The menus for both the NES Classic and the Super NES Classic do have like the box art when you're scrolling through the menus, so you do get to see them. It's just the NES Classic with 30 games didn't have, I guess, enough room to put them all there. But you also got a few screenshots, so you got Super Mario World, Legend of Zelda, Mario Kart, Star Fox, Super Metroid, and F-Zero there. Alright, and let's just get to the console and the controllers, because everything else is already hooked up to my television. Also, the tab here has the catchphrase, "Now you're playing with superpower," which was the marketing phrase for the Super Nintendo, and I think they eventually changed to, I think it was called "Play It Loud," was one of their like 90s tude marketing things, but "Now you're playing with power," superpower was the marketing thing that they had for the longest time. So we have our setup instructions again with our warranty card. We're not going to worry too much about that, but similar to the NES Classic, which had like a marketing image here, this one has a poster included that's like the poster you would have gotten with a bunch of games. You know, they would have little posters in there that would preview other sort of upcoming games, stuff like that. This is also something that you might find on the back of a console that would show some of the games available. So you got like Super Mario World, and it's like with 96 levels and 9 worlds to explore. You'll be put to the test. Mario will have to run fast, fly high, dive deep, and jump far to save the day. Luckily, you'll have help from a friend, Yoshi. This is the most awesome Mario adventure yet. So it has like the little marketing blurbs that I think were on the backs of the boxes, but you've got like just some images from the screen. You get like the title screen and a couple screenshots of stuff in play. Just really, really cool. And again, this was another huge nostalgic moment for me when I saw this poster, because I used to have so many of these posters with the games or from like the console itself. So just really, really awesome. And I'm a sucker for stuff like that. I mean, the whole point of these consoles is definitely to, you know, appeal to your sense of nostalgia. And Nintendo just hit it out of the park with the way that they've done this. So first thing. So again, we've got our power brick here. I'll just show that off because I've already got it out. And I just want to check something really quick, because I'm pretty sure like the voltage and stuff is the same for both consoles. But since I'm here and I've got them both out, let me just make 100% sure. And if there is an issue, then I'll have to switch them out. But I think these are the exact same. Yep, so 100 to 240 volt. Yeah, so these are the exact same. So you can use, you don't have to have both of them set up necessarily if you don't mind switching the cords. And I'll be honest, part of having these old school consoles when I was a kid, having multiples of them, was that sometimes you'd have to switch the cords out. So totally fine with that, but just the sort of curiosity moment that I had the opportunity to look into, so I thought I would do it. So we got that. And then we have the controller selects that I packed these in wrong, so the cord should have gone in there as well. I'll fix that when I actually go to pack these for when we go away for the weekend. But you got the controller here. It has the exact same size, shape, and feel as the original Super Nintendo. Buttons all feel the same, which is great. But the other positive thing is that the cord is like twice as long as the NES Classic. So you got this much, much longer cord. And this is the one that I actually use. I use these with the NES Classic because it's a longer cord, and this one is perfect size for our living room. So setting the console on our coffee table, these cords will reach to our chairs. so I can be reclined back and you know, playing some games. The only thing is I have to lean forward to you know, reset the console, which is fine. The other interesting thing about this is that the Super Nintendo Classic came with 2 controllers. Oh, just pop that one out. So it actually came with a second controller. The reason that this is kind of interesting is that the Super Nintendo Classic doesn't have as many 2-player games as the NES Classic. There's a ton of 2-player games on the NES Classic Edition, but only 1 controller, versus the Super Nintendo Classic, which had fewer 2-player games, but 2 controllers. So, I mean, I guess obviously it was a response to criticism that the NES Classic didn't have the 2 controllers, but anyway, it's also a throwback to how consoles used to be packaged in the day, because the Super Nintendo was a system that came by default with 2 controllers. And like, there were later versions that only had the 1, but the original Super Nintendo version that I had from like 1991 had 2 controllers. And then we've got the console itself. So we just have our tray here, and underneath the tray just flips up, and this is where the power cord and HDMI cable would be stored. But like I said, those are hooked into my TV. But here we have the Super Nintendo, and this looks like the North American Super Nintendo, which is really, really cool. Again, you've got the cartridge slot, which is purely decorative. The eject button is also decorative, which kind of sucks, but you know, it is what it is. The other buttons, though, the power switch does work, and it makes that same clicking noise that the original ones would make. And your reset one is just sort of spring-loaded, so it just pops back down, and that's how you get back to your main menu. And again, it's just HDMI out and DC in with the HDMI symbol there. So on the front, like I said, we have our controller ports. And again, these are completely decorative because, as you can see, this is the core, the connector for the controllers. But this just pops open like so, and you just kind of pull it out, and it folds down to show the actual controller ports, which is cool. But I like the fact that they actually have the covers on there. I kind of wish that where they did re-release the NES Classic, it would have been cool if they would have redesigned it to have the controller ports covered as well. But there you go. So there is the Super NES Classic Edition and the NES Classic Edition. Unbox them both. Love these things to death. Such a nostalgic trip for me. You know, a lot of these games were a major part of my childhood, so I can't say enough good things. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time. Take care.